Here we are gathered today to talk about cash flow in business, and we have a great panel of experts here to share their thoughts. We have Carl, Zander, and Jason, all from highly prestigious firms, and we are going to treat this as basically I think the best way to treat it is as a free consultation. We've got some crash out experts. We're going to pillage them for good advice on improving cash flow in your business, and we're not going to pay them. So with that in mind, we'll get on to the crunchy questions. But gents, if you don't mind just going around the room, starting with Jason, and just quick, 30 seconds to a minute on who you are and what you do, and then we'll go from there.
My name's Jason Daniels. I'm based here in Brisbane with a practice called BusinessDepot. My background is almost exclusively retail, wholesale, manufacturing, and e-commerce. So we live, eat, and breathe stock, debtors, creditors, and all things in that products and goods market.
Fantastic. Zander, tell us about yourself.
I thought we were going clockwise, but anyway, my name's Zander. I'm from a firm called Xeta. We're basically trying to become the next PwC. They've got a 400-year head start on us, but we'll get there. Very similar to Jason, we're also Brisbane, Adelaide, Sydney, soon to be Perth and Victoria, if everything goes right. And we work with lots of FMCG clients. We work with lots of import and export. We help clients that help big firms like Woolies, Coles, IKEA, etc. And we're in love with Unleashed, been with them for many, many years. Is there nothing they can't do?
Just go. Sweet backhander there, Zander. Appreciate that. Carl, on to you.
Brian, my name's Carl Ferner from BDO in New Zealand. So I'm based in the Auckland office, and I'm in the business advisory service line, and we also have a specialization in information systems. So that's accounting systems, inventory systems, making sure clients are on the right solutions. And we have a significant client base in the wholesale distribution, as well as e-commerce and a wider range. So always talking to businesses and CFOs about cash flow planning and everything of that, and then also, managing that inventory and making sure good systems are in place.
Fantastic. And my name's Greg Roughan, and I work with Unleashed. And last piece of housekeeping, actually, we've got Tyler Barnes is on the line on the call as well, and he's an expert in operating Unleashed. So I know we have a lot of customers online as well, or anybody who's interested in Unleashed can just drop a note into the chat, and Tyler will be able to pick that up. We might do a sort of either online or offline, and we'll also do a Q&A at the end. If you have burning questions, drop them into the chat, and we'll be picking those up probably 10-15 minutes at the end. So I just want to throw it out there to, cash flow, big topic, right? It's on everybody's mind. We're all smelling the economic conditions, starting to smell, the wind is shifting a little. It's a priority for a lot of people. What are the areas in a business, before we dive right into the weeds, what sort of areas of the business can we look at, and where should we be starting? So do you mind, Jason, if we start with you?
For a lot of the businesses that we're working with, it's really back to cash flow 101. A lot of businesses got lazy through COVID. They were doing very well, whether it be through government stimulus or were trading very well. And economic conditions have changed, whether it be discretionary spend has come out of the market, whether it be costs have gotten out of control, people cost pressures, the Aussie dollar dropping, cost of customer acquisition going up. You've got to be looking at every area of those costs. You've got to be looking at collecting your debtors. It's almost, you can probably tell by the grey in the beard and the no hair. I've been around a while. I went through the GFC, and we're finding we're going back to a lot of those lessons we learned through the GFC, and almost going back to those again. And there's a lot of businesses that have never been through a hard time, and have forgotten some of those 101 lessons. They don't have the basic terms of trade in place. They're not doing the debtor checks. They don't have remalpa clauses in their debtors. They've never done min-max planning. They've never done, they've not even had proper stock controls in place. And so we're finding that it's back to cash flow 101. budgets and forecasting, understanding your true cost of stock, your true cost of customer delivery. Who are your profitable clients? Who are your unprofitable clients? There's no point selling it to somebody if they're not going to pay it. Are you paying sales commissions on customers that are never going to pay? It's a really broad topic, but at the end of the day, do you know where your cash is going? And do you know where your cash is coming from? Mapping that out.
I mean, I like a bullet point, so I've just been scribbling down as you speak, and I sort of, there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas. If we look at their creditors, debtors, inventory, budgets, I wrote down forecasting for that in a way, and then margins and COGS, kind of part of the same party there. Zander, when we spoke, you were kind of like, well, that's nice, but revenue.
100%. We had a prior discussion with Carl and myself as well before Jason spoke. Jason's absolutely right. 101 is to get the basics into the play. Now, it sounds, we said it sounds wishy-washy, it sounds lukewarm, but the reality is that, I mean, the GFC was 12 years ago. And it feels as though everyone's forgotten how things happened and how they got there. It's almost like they've taken this monumental financial pandemic and have ignored all the basic fundamentals that make businesses work properly. And now all of a sudden we've got SVB and we've got the Bank of New York and we've got the next domino effect that's going to have, let's call it 6 months from now in Australia, big macroeconomic impact that's going to hit us at the microeconomic level. Just speaking with Carl, one of the things we spoke about was how many companies actually have a control process written down to explain what their customer life cycle is. Because as far as I know, the first line in the profit and loss statement is revenue. And that little piece of paper that you're looking at that says P&L, underneath it, there's the real world. And the real world are customers, sales processes, debtors, age analyses, all of the different fundamental 101s. So going directly into it, and I've got my little notes for this topic, because we could talk about this for years, but it comes down to, do you even have the right starting point with your customers before you even embark upon something like offering them stock, giving them terms, allowing you to deliver to them within 3 days, urgent billing? You're giving away assets that you own or manufactured to a customer that might never ever pay you. So I would say starting point, fundamentals, yes. Do you have a customer life cycle? Do you have a sales control process? Do you have logistics manufacturing processes? Are these actually written down so that if someone leaves your company for a competitor, you still have continuity of processing? And then back to the fundamentals, do we have projections? Do we know what our minimums and maximums are? We could keep going, and I could keep talking forever. But ultimately it is that, it's fundamentals, it's getting the basics right. And I always start on the customer-centric focus because my business only exists because of my customers.
So I reckon we'll dive into the weeds shortly, but I guess, Carl, to put a spin on the sort of open question of which, is just what are the areas of a business? I guess you've got quite a technology focus in what you do. Are there areas of technology that the typical client that comes to you, is there an obvious area in their technological stack that they're missing, or is there an obvious set of processes that they're missing? Where do you like to start as a priority?
That's right. I mean, especially when it comes to cash flow, how do we speed up cash flow? I mean, it's business processes, and do they have good processes? Yes. Are they written down? Absolutely. Do they know what they are? And then there's a whole lot of technology that can help those processes if they don't have the right technology in place. Examples are businesses that are shipping out their products, but they're not billing until the end of the month. Why aren't they billing that straight away? And that might be because they're too busy shipping out products. The person doing the billing is on the warehouse floor, picking and packing and shipping goods out the door, and printing a piece of paper and putting it on somebody's desk who's on holiday. A good system in place could automatically be sending that invoice right then and there. Even better system can be, easily collecting payment, following up payment. I mean, a really great example that I've run into, which is where we're sending out products, sending out the invoice on time, and then the data collecting team call up the client and say, hey, you had 7 days terms, you haven't paid, and they say, oh, I didn't get your invoice, and turns out it's in the junk mail. I'm believing them, it's in the junk mail. It's well, you know, if we sent them a text message that said, hey, you've got an invoice, that cut down, when they put that in place, that cut down that amount of calls by like half, because that text message made people go, where is it? Oh, there, it's in my junk mail, and they paid on time. They weren't even not intending to pay on time, they just didn't see it. So those simple automations, technology that can just speed up sending the invoice out, speed up getting it paid as well.
It's an unusual conversation to be having at this time. You know, in these kinds of economic conditions, it can feel a bit funny to lean in and go, oh, we'll buy some technology to save yourself money. You know, ideally you want to have it, you know, set up. It's also quite hard to quantify, isn't it? Some of the benefits, like you say, just the broad brush efficiency benefits of just being able to do more with your people rather than bogging them down with admin, but can have quite a transformative effect. Is there anything in particular, looking at priorities, that you'd like to get into, you know, in the areas where creditors, debtors, inventory, forecasting, technology, what sort of, and I guess sales as well. Jason, do you have any area that you like to get into?
It depends on the business and where their pressure points are. If you look at the businesses that we work with, they've all got different pressure points. But if we look at I guess where we're focusing at the moment, we're doing a lot of break-even analysis around cash flow, which is different to break-even analysis around profit and loss. We're then trying to bring that down to, right, well, how does that come back to an average basket spend? Where is the sensitivity around foreign exchange? Where's the sensitivity around lead times on stock? Where's the sensitivity around average GP? What stock's selling fast, what's slow moving, and how are we moving that? At all costs, I like to try and avoid getting into the discounting cycle. Should we be bundling products? Should we be rewarding our regular buyers? Should we be doing deals with specific frequent purchasers and good customers? Looking at our good payers rather than our slow payers and rewarding them. The problem with the discounting cycle you get into is you start to train your customers to only buy when you're in a discounting cycle. And again, if you go back 10 years, when my kids were young, I was trained very well by Target and Big W to only ever buy toys on the once a year 50% off sale. You buy a year's worth of toys, and they made no money on it. And hence, after a few years, they stopped it. But if you look at a lot of the e-commerce businesses we work with, they had a phenomenal November, and it was a combination of Black Friday and Australia Post scaring everyone into getting their Christmas orders by November. But as a result, December was pretty slow and January was abysmal. So is that now the new normal in terms of trading pattern? So doing that forecasting is really quite critical, so that you can make decisions in advance of having the problem rather than being caught with your pants down.
Focusing in on that, the question of discounting. I mean, discounting, the big driver for it is holding too much inventory, right? We've just done a piece of research. We'll, you know, context, how the customers on the call will be aware. We've been making a lot of noise. We've made a new tool, Advanced Inventory Manager. Effectively, it allows you to sort of identify the appropriate min-max levels for each line in your business. And, you know, what we did is run that tool over what we know are our customers' stock on hand, and able to quantify exactly how much people are overstocked. Everybody knows, you know, everyone's overstocked because we're all exiting this awful supply chain crisis, and those interesting reasons as well around Christmas. But to actually know exactly how much you are, okay, well, the next step is, what do you do with it? Yes, if you've got a short cash flow cycle, you can reduce your purchasing, but if you're stuck with stuff in your warehouse, and how do you, you know, what do you do with that? And I guess what would be really interesting to know are, what are the things you can do other than doing a great big Toys R Us sale? Because I feel like we all agree that's a hit we want to avoid, right? So do we have any tactics? I had an interesting one actually from your colleague. Sorry, his name escapes me, Carl. Sorry. Had an interesting conversation at third hand about how the wine industry deals with it, with white labeling and that sort of thing, and sort of, you know, taking excess stock, creating a whole new brand, so that you're not undermining the value of what you're selling, and it's fundamentally the same thing. What tactics out, you know, what's out there that we can do?
I'm jumping on that one. I mean, yeah, that probably would have been Josh Ambler from my team you would have been chatting with on the wine industry. Yeah, Greg. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one, right? Because the obvious one is, oh, we'll discount it and do a big sale and get it all out the door. But then are you selling it at a loss? And then yes, you're, I guess, turning into cash, but definitely not as much as you might want to do. The risk of go slowing it is, I mean, especially if it's something that can expire or something that can become obsolete, if it's, you know, anything sort of technology related. If you've got 3 years worth of stock, well, in a year and a half, maybe the next model comes out and no one's buying it, and now suddenly you really have to discount it. So it probably comes down to sort of sales tactics. You know, do you need to look at a different market, a different strategy? You know, if you're selling just to your sort of, you know, one at a time, you know, do you need to go have a look at a sort of a bulk buyer? You know, if you're selling desk lamps to the public, can you go find someone building a hotel that needs 500 because there's one in every room? You know, those sorts of things. I mean, it probably would still be more of a wholesale deal, but it moves a lot at a proper value point rather than just discounting it right down to nothing to get it out the door. I think we've had a lot of, like I said, the sort of such a decade of non-disruption where, you know, low interest rates, costs weren't moving, inflation was low, and now we're suddenly in a high inflation environment. People are having to really check their costings. You know, should they be putting their prices up, in fact, because, you know, without noticing it, they just keep selling at the same price and they're actually not making as much money. So that's almost sort of, they're discounting by stealth, by simply not putting the price up when they're buying. And that's maybe if the buying team are not talking to the sales team and they don't have a good system that tells them the margin they're making in between. So I mean, again, I'm all about systems and automation. If the system can say, warning, you're selling it below cost, and you're going, but hang on, this is the price I always sold it at. If that can be, that warning can be earlier, it's going to allow people to make proper margins on their sales.
It's been an interesting discussion, particularly with some of our e-commerce clients who have both wholesale and retail, where the cost of customer acquisition is now actually exceeding what their almost what their cost of goods is. We've seen Facebook and Instagram advertising in particular go through the roof. And if you're looking at your cost of your customer acquisition plus your cost of goods, it's now actually more profitable to sell to a wholesale customer. And that's been a pivot in the last 3 or 4 months. And there's been markets where it's actually easier not to sell into some overseas markets because it actually costs you more with the shipping, your cost of goods and the cost of the customer than you're actually selling at retail.
Jason, the shake-up in the digital sector is because Shopify has made it so easy for anyone to make a little online store that the saturation becomes massive. And at that level as well, they're shooting themselves in the foot because the cannibalization of different SKUs and products, it just makes it too blended, too easy, too simple. And eventually there'll only be 1 or 2 at the end of the sector. So I always wonder what's going to happen in 5 years' time to those people.
Okay. You can lose a lot of money in a month too if you run a discount thinking that's just your cost of goods and you forget to factor in those other costs. And you're talking significant money for that cost of click. The costs you need to be right on top of and in real time.
Yeah, there's layers, and I mean, I've got nothing that goes against anything Carl and Jason have said. It literally just comes together. You've got the theory and you've got the technology, but I would always say you have to know your products and you have to know what you're doing, because it's very easy to go, oh cool, we have every system in the world, we've got a technology stack, we've built this, we've got all these things. But at the end of the day, do you know what products you have, and do you know how your sales and your COGS and your logistics connect? And if you can't connect those, if you can't prove how $1 travels from purchasing, bringing in the stuff, building it, manufacturing it, or distributing it, collecting the money and seeing how that dollar travels throughout your business from the beginning to the end, if you can't see that, I don't know how most clients are going to be able to look after their business into the future, because now they're just rolling the dice and they're going, woo, I hope a 7 comes up.
Fully factoring in that cost of sales. Carl, just an interesting point about price increases. it's been some really interesting discussions with clients around price increases and the strategies, whether to go big bang or whether to roll it out in smaller lots.
Yeah, it's going to come down to again, know your customer, right? You know, is it going to be big bang or small lots going to do it? Maybe even have a step strategy. Have it, you know, not every customer gets the same, depends on the business.
I have a question for Jason and Carl then, from my perspective. What do you do if you're doing a quarterly price increase that's minuscule at a time, and eventually you start getting fatigue from the client, versus being that first mover in your market where you have a lot of competition and you have to do the big bang? What do you think is how do you do it?
Great questions, Zander. I think
Dan, if you do, you don't.
If all the people on the call had the same answer to that question, I think the life would be quite easy. We might be out of a job as well. And that's the thing.
Only thing I've seen from my side is it comes down to our clients, because remember, I'm not the warehouse owner. So it's very easy for me to say, here's my consulting, here's my advisory, this is everything. But at the end of the day, if my client takes a huge risk on licorice flavored bananas and they try to sell these licorice flavored bananas, it's their risk, but I'm supposed to be the intelligent advisor that understands the macro, micro, and basic business things. But what I've seen so far is it literally means that you've got to have the relationship that can stand the test of time, where you can work with your end customer who's probably going to be reselling what you're selling, and just be able to say, look, the cost is too much, we have to raise the price, and then be able to let them work with you and negotiate. Here's my monthly increase just because this kind of unit moves quickly, or here's my annual increase because this is a very slow moving mattress and the person coming in won't see me for another 8 years.
And that was going to be my response. I've had clients take both approaches, and I've had clients who have actually taken both approaches within the business with different customers, and it's come down to the relationship and what they've been able to negotiate.
So again, the tool is secondary to the relationship.
Yeah,
and I think also
we can show them the numbers, we can lead them.
Yeah. And I mean, my piece of advice to businesses is also back yourself, back your value. You know, if you're providing good value, good product, don't be afraid of, everyone has to increase prices. Costs are going up all over the place. And then you see people are so worried about putting a price increase out there, and you go, hang on, if your clients aren't going to wear a small price increase, is your product really delivering them value? And if it is, they're going to still want it.
But here's the thing, without that data, and this is Greg, where your t-shirt, can you pull back? Without that information, I can't say anything. Like, this is the beauty of what we're dealing with. I've got some big clients out there that work with Woolies and Coles, like Olive Green Organics. They're like a perfect example. That information that we've been able to derive from years and years of using Unleashed and all the support tools, that gives us that backup to come into the clients and have that confidence Carl's talking about and say, this is what it should be, this is what it might be. These are the best advantages that you could get using the data that's been determined. And we can do it SKU by SKU, month by month, day by day, spot by spot, location. It's insane.
The landed costs, accurate landed costs, where it can be a hard thing to work out if you're not actually able to go, wow, my courier over here is twice the price. My taxes on these goods, because they come in here, to actually be able to record that against those items, I think is quite transformative for working out your true margin.
I was going to say, true margin for companies that are large, like if you're starting off small, you'll make a few wins and you'll celebrate by buying champagne. But at a certain point, when you're making between 2 million and 10 million, you're not going to feel the difference when you move up 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, 8 million. Your life has the same problems. However, in order to get from 10 million to 20 million, that's where those margins matter. Really, really big differences.
There's a question from James on the pricing quick question. He says, how about gaslighting price increases, which I'm interpreting as basically signaling that you're going to raise them in future. So just buy now when it's cheap. I assume that's what you're talking about there, Jason. Sorry, James. A little bit like what the banks do with interest rates, right? When they want to slow down the spending, they signal the upcoming interest rates.
I think you've got to be careful with damaging the client relationships.
Who's been watching Max?
No one wants to raise the prices if they don't have to, and if it's going to be a problem, it's a risky game to play there.
I think a sort of a parallel version of that is when you're buying in bulk at a set price and you're buying 6 months or a year's worth of goods. And if the environment is one where you know that inflation's going up, it might be tempting to lock in a bigger purchase than you need at a lower price. Those are difficult questions to deal with, aren't they?
Yeah, foreign exchange is going to play a part in that as well. We've been talking to the banks, and look, I'm seeing everything from 62 cents in the dollar to 70 cents in the dollar in terms of what people are forecasting. Like, that's a huge impact on your cost of goods over the course of the next 12 months. And we've done blog pieces for people, and that's another piece where, again, you've got to do some sensitivity around your cost of goods. Do you buy in bulk now thinking it's going to go one way or the other? And understanding that sensitivity piece. Just go back to one of your pieces, Zander, around understanding the product profitability. The other piece I like to look at around too is the customer profitability, and understanding where your customer profitability is, because I tend to find the customers that aren't profitable are also the ones that don't pay on time, are also the ones that are your highest maintenance, take most of your sales time, complain the most. And it's usually quite a useful exercise to go through, because they're the ones that push back on the price increases. And it's just a really useful exercise to go through with our clients and look at whether or not you do need to chop off some of that tail occasionally, and to keep that profitable growth going.
One of the things we've done a couple of months ago for a big importer-exporter was we went through the entire client list and we looked at their sales, and all of the data is obviously extracted from the business intelligence reporting portion of our Unleashed instance. But then we also took a look at all our SKUs, and it's quite funny, you know the 80-20 rule? 80% of our revenue was coming from 20% of our products. 80% of our income was coming from 20% of our clients. So if we went to the corollary, we looked at our clients that were costing us a lot to hold their stock, to carry the stock, to do the logistics, etc. And the margins we were making were not good enough to maintain that. So ultimately, we had to make the decision to cut certain ones, or to slow down on other ones, or to create price tiering for those ones that were not worth the while and therefore had to pay a slightly higher premium to have the benefit of our service. And it's a hard decision, but it's fair because it's results. You can see the reality.
Yeah, we do have done a similar thing where you use simple graph overlaying revenue by customer with margin by customer, right? So you want to see high revenue, higher margin at one end, and often it ends up quite inverse, where you've got, even you might have a high revenue customer, you're making tons of sales, but their margin is super slim. And then you look at the other end and you've got these customers that you don't sell much to, but you're making great margin. And so you're going, well, hang on, how do we boost those high margin customers to be at the high revenue end? And it's very interesting if you see things that when you overlay those two stats, which is, it's a very simple one, the reports out of any system, and you can go, well, you know, some people get surprised when they see that. They think their best customer is, and then they hang on, well, according to this, they're not really our best customer, you know, and surprising.
But at the same time,
pumping product, maybe discounting. Yeah.
Can I ask, sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to ask a quick question. How does everyone feel about firing a customer, or basically not dealing with them? Even, it's not their fault that they might not be doing well, but how do you do it politely? How do you slowly phase them out of your business? And is it worth it? Is it right? Is it wrong?
No, I find you don't fire them per se unless they've really done something offensive. It's you price it appropriately. You try and collect the cash appropriately. It's about the messaging. It's because I find that it's those customers who are the sole payer, they're the one that argue on the pricing. It's standing your ground on the pricing and not chasing every sale because you have to have it. It's instead of getting paid on 45 days, it's guys know it's the 30th day. The next invoice, the next shipment isn't coming out until the money's in the bank.
That's exactly when we were talking about this weeks and months ago. It came down to is you have to know who your clients are first, so that you can actually organize the segmentation. Is this a person that's going to be 7 days? Is this going to be cash up front? Is this going to be there? And I mean, we are talking about cash flow. So even though these clients we only identify later, they have a huge impact on the cash flow.
Yeah. like I've got no problem with saying to a client, sorry, you're back to COD because you've been a bad client for the last 6 months, and until we get your account back on terms for a period, and then by the way, we're halving your account, and until you're back in the good books. I've had no problem in the past recommending to clients that they refer them to debt collectors and to go to small claims, because once you get a reputation in a particular industry that you're very quick to move on that, you'll get paid first. The squeaky wheel gets the oil.
And it's also it's a relationship, right? You've got a business relationship. We are partners. You want a client that is a partner. You don't want a client that's just going to be dead weight.
Yeah. Anybody can get product away for free.
I have a question. Do you guys ever recommend a technology solution in terms of, Carl was talking about the revenue, the volume level of things that sort of requires, you're not going to put your expensive account manager onto the client. You don't want to throw that money away, but you need to manage it at a very low cost. Is there a role for a sales portal, for example, where you can set credit terms, where you can, it's not personal, you're not insulting anybody, but it's like, go do business here and click this, and you have to pay with a credit card, or if you're a brand new customer, etc.
Absolutely. We've got a liquor wholesaling business, which we're actually working with you guys at the moment, where a new buyer's just taken over, and they were taking every order by phone or email. And it was half the clients were on 14 days, the other half were on COD, and they're going to be going through a B2B portal. It will dramatically cut down the admin, and the customers actually want the self-service. They actually don't want the grief of picking up the phone, sending the email, and doing that. We've moved on. People are actually happy to do that. They don't want the grief of having to have the salesperson come around or pick up the phone to a salesperson.
Yeah, totally agree. That's the ease of doing business, right? If you can just jump on a portal, you can see your pricing right there. You can see if they've got it in stock. You can place your order, and then you're going to get the orders. And if they're coming into your system efficiently, saving admin, so orders are going to get out the door faster, you get paid faster. It just moves the velocity of the sale is just quicker. Interesting one that we've found on that is when you have a portal is the question of, do you show them if you've got enough stock or if you're out of stock? And again, it comes down to, on the one hand, you don't want to oversell, right? You don't want to be calling the customer saying, sorry, you placed an order, but we don't actually have it because you look bad. Equally, some businesses go, well, actually, I'd rather have the order come in so I can call the customer and say, well, we don't have the green one, but we've got the blue one. Do you want to take that? Instead of them jumping on the competitor's B2B portal and ordering the green one, right? Steve got done. So, and that will depend on who your customers are, what you're selling. Is it easy to jump on the competitor? A great example. My wife was at the supermarket, and there was no baby formula. We needed formula. She got a phone app, other supermarket, ordered online. It arrived that afternoon. They've lost a sale because there's no stock on the shelf. It was probably out the back, but they've lost a sale because it's so easy to order from the competitor nowadays. So that comes down to, that's again inventory management and stock outs, and do you lose a sale?
Something that just popped into my head right now, based on what you're saying, is EDIs that connect to Unleashed and Help, because we're actually dealing with this. One of our clients is a big overseas manufacturer, and we run all the manufacturing inside South Korea. We then sell it to Australia, and then from Australia we sell it to UK, EU. Now that they're no longer connected, we sell to UK, we sell to EU, and then we sell to USA. And in the EU, we use a centralized warehouse and an EDI, because obviously that's the most efficient way to do it. And like you were saying, do you tell them what you have? Do you tell them what you don't have? But the great thing about the EDI that connects to our system is that it speaks to both of our Unleashed, both the Australian and the South Korean one. It connects and lets them know what we need, and then it sends through the requirements so that we can actually create a new batch of the manufactured goods to immediately send it between the two different entities and then over to the EU. And it works like magic. You just go. Yeah, lovely. Efficiency. And from a cash flow perspective, it's great because the EU and the EDI just happens. It just magically happens. That means that your velocity is semi-instantaneously.
Did that need a sort of bespoke integration to connect it up?
all of the guys that work with you in the Access group are all connected to all these different firms, so we get to sit with them and do all those items. But its starting point is obviously the baseline unleashed without any adjustments. And then each different EDI has certain API integration requirements, and they have specific rules. And the EU says under their rules for privacy what you can and can't say. They've also got something called PEPL, which is their version of electronic invoicing. So yes, it is slightly bespoke, but at the same time, it's not that magical. It's just turning the documents that you see inside the Unleashed database into something usable to then transmit and store in AWS. Nice. And this is just millions of abbreviations.
Yeah. Sorry, backtracking a little bit, we talked a little about portals and so on, and I just there was mention of bundling as a tactic for shifting inventory, and I guess as soon as you've got someone looking at either a B2B portal or an e-commerce platform, you've got the opportunity to put another product under their noses, whether it's at checkout or in a custom sort of group of items. What are the advantages of bundling, and does it work? That's what I want to know.
There's certainly certain retail industries it does work. We find that using some old stock as a giveaway, rather than necessarily discounting it, works well if we're bundling it with new product that's coming in. Putting it in out like a giveaway bag or a show bag works well, or bundling it with a special event type pack works well as a way of moving that product. It can work well with things that are coming, like clothing that are coming to say end of season, or have got an obsolescence date coming out, where you might be able to bundle it with an accessory or a bag or something like that, where again it's a slight way of differentiating it against a competitor product, and a way just to differentiate against price, where again you might be able to just move it and have a sales tactic that just gets you away from straight discounting.
Yep. I mean, I'm a shocker for buying the Pick 6 at the bottle store. I know that there'll be 5 beers in there that I like, and one of them is dead stock, and I'm shifting that stock, right? But all it takes is a little bit of different artwork on the cardboard box that it goes in, and all of a sudden you've got a mechanism for shifting dead or old stock out the door. And I guess it's very, very industry dependent, isn't it? It's like you go to Cotton On, and there's a big thing of plastic sunglasses by the checkout. That's one tactic. The other one's retail. Everything's different. Any other tactics for moving on that excess stock? I mean, I guess we're dabbling in the territory of inventing an entire new brand. I mean, again, totally industry dependent. But the example that I heard was about clean skin wine. It turns out that half the time you can have a very expensive bottle of wine can be sold. You'd be drinking that expensive bottle of wine in a cheap clean skin brand, and the intention of that is so you're not devaluing the brand of your high value wine, but you are moving on that bumper crop that happened to overstock the industry that year. Are there other tactics that we might not be aware of that you guys can pull out of your pocket when you've got the situation?
Do you guys know about TK Maxx? They love buying everything that's out of stock from your side and then selling it as a treasure trove on their side. That's just one thing. It's a stupid thing. And then wish.com, get all the stuff you don't want.
The rise of the liquidation type market.
Yeah. But in reality, sorry, Jason, you go first.
No, I was going to say, we've had some clients who have had stock warehoused in the US. The US market hasn't taken off, and they've been able to liquidate the stock in the US through. It's quite big in North America. It's really just starting here.
So is that a business model where you literally there'll be someone there who'll just buy everything that you've got? It's like a literal fire sale. Yeah. Probably last resort, I would presume, because you're going to be selling it pretty quickly to them. Yeah.
But then going back to the philosophy is, why are we overstocked in the first place?
Yeah.
And that's where you have to take a step back and say, who are my customers? What is my market? Do I understand my products? Do I understand the seasonality? Do I understand the macro and microeconomic effects? Am I capable of doing my optimized minimum order quantity? Do I know my lead times? Do I know exactly when I'll need this and when it will arrive? That kind of stuff is tantamount. And I know that we're having a very high level discussion because everyone here already knows stock. But if you're a viewer on this call and you've never dealt with these detailed things, the cool thing is you got something like Unleashed University that at least gets you into that mindset. And then on top of that, you've got Investopedia, you've got Google, you've got Wikipedia, you've got all these different tools and resources. But again, it still comes down to, if you're selling water bottles, chances are you'll sell more of them during summertime.
Yeah.
And knowing what your order quantities are will prevent overstock from taking place in the first place.
And that's, I think, was quite a shift. Sorry, I was just, quite a shift. Everything was just in time stock, hold the minimum stock. And then through COVID, suddenly it was, we used to be cash is king. Suddenly it was stock is king. It was, I'm the only one who's got any stock, so I'm making the sales. No one else can get it. But that encouraged, if someone says, I've got a whole container load, I take it, just take it, right? And then now we're going, they have to make sure they didn't take too much because it is coming back to a normal or a more normal scenario and working out, okay, have I got too much? Do I need to slow this down? Am I going to take that big container load again? Has times shifted again? Not only are we coming out of COVID where there was anything to do with working from home sold like crazy, don't necessarily expect that to continue, but also now, well, what's we're going into potentially recessionary or inflationary, and it's okay, what's going to are those same things now going to slow down and say, oh, are other things going to pick up? What's the stuff that's everyone's going to want to buy in the next change of our economic environment? So, but yeah, the stock is king is an interesting one because it was completely the opposite to what was sort of the what you did 5 years ago. You would never overbuy stock. In fact, you would always try to have the least amount and just reorder as you needed it. And then suddenly you had ships getting stuck in canals and no one getting their stock for months and months. So it is constantly being on top of every line item and where does it come from and who do we buy it from so we can keep managing it.
Yeah, we've certainly found that there's a bit of a perfect storm at the moment too, where November's sales, particularly in e-commerce, got brought forward into November. December was slower than they expected. January dropped off a cliff, but they had to bring their purchasing forward because of Chinese New Year. And so they're currently sitting on a lot of stock, and the first, I guess, reaction was let's discount and get rid of it. In a lot of cases, we've gone back to first principles of actually let's just get out and actually push our brand. Let's build the strength around our brand. Let's remind people, get out and work our mailing lists, our marketing database. But let's not do a $20,000 video and photo shoot. Let's get out and do something really quite simple, and push those products. Let's push the unique. Let's get back to what our brand was pre-COVID, and we're finding that that's actually getting traction, and we're seeing that they've actually been able to cut some of those costs in March, get back to their first principles, and the sales are returning, but they're getting a grip back over their margins and a grip back over their costs, but also looking at their forward planning now around right-sizing their inventory going forward and right-sizing their costs. And probably being a bit more conservative. That okay, there might be a bit more. They may not get every sale that comes through the door. There might be some exclusivity around stock. There might be some exclusivity around product, but let's make sure it's profitable.
I think advertising discounts just a race to the bottom, right? And there were some pretty high profile examples in Australia recently in the press of huge volumes of inventory being pushed out, and basically a public that's been trained to shop only for discounts. So yeah, I guess you're saying the creativity and brand building is kind of key there. Gents, have we got any questions in the audience? If you'd like to take the opportunity, or are there any? And while we wait to see if we've got any questions that we can pick up, do you guys have any burning advice that you'd like to pass on?
And for myself, it would probably just be, again, inventory-based cash flow is, if you're relying on one person in your business knowing in their head which stock items are the right ones and what's the lead time and have we got the right amount, and if that person leaves, are you gonna pick that up? Or if that person's unavailable, are you gonna be able to pick that up? Like we said, Zander said right at the start, it's making sure those processes are known, ideally written down, ideally transferable within the business, and for myself, I would say in a good system, so that anybody could pick it up should you need to. Otherwise, it can be very difficult if it's relying on some spreadsheet that crashes, or someone deletes a zero and hard codes something into cell 17,000. Can get difficult. So good systems and good processes, well documented, well written down, know what you're doing.
Nice. One mouse click can upload a CSV file which could change the world.
Yeah. I've got sorry.
So Greg, so I mean, we've gone through like a lot of the stuff that sort of as a high level does everything. There's not really much more than it, but it comes down to, I think, again, it doesn't matter if your business is 20 years old, look at the fundamentals and just look at it fresh. Don't just keep doing things the way you used to. It's the whole fridge insanity. Keeping to open the fridge and every time expecting something different doesn't result in a change. It's better for a person to just rip off the Band-Aid and say, if I was a buyer of my business and I looked at my inventory system and my sales, would I be happy with the way things were? There's no reason why not to just use a fresh look and say, are we doing the fundamentals correctly? And are we doing the high level stuff at the right inception point for each client?
I've got a question here from Upma, who says, as a small business owner, using Unleashed has been great. We manufacture our products in Australia and we wholesale and retail via the B2B portal and Shopify. However, with current economic situation, there's a lot to manage and handle. What are 3 key points you recommend us focusing on while the tide shifts to manage cash flow? So I'm just pulling out from our conversation, the things that I'm hearing are creditor control, getting close to your reordering and your inventory, and one more. What would you say would be the third main priority? And something easy. We're talking obviously a small business with a small number of people.
So we've got 3 people that do this a lot. So let's all do one.
All right.
Controlling your costs.
Yeah,
Say again, sorry.
Controlling your costs. Know that you're getting a return on every dollar you're spending.
Yeah, I would be checking your debtors, collecting your debtors. Don't let them get out of hand.
And then for me, cash flow timing, if I have 45 days on my supplier and my customer's on 30 days, then I immediately have a 15-day advantage when it comes to the cash flows.
Yeah.
Right. Really, the real fundamental stuff.
And cost control is knowing what's the price for every aspect of this SKU: delivery, stocking, transport, holding it on the shelf. You guys know the big retailers have the 42% rules for scan and discount and all that jazz. And it's a very difficult system to deal with, but it works. But ultimately, yeah, fundamentals, cost controls, debtors, SKU control.
Every percent you can save on your costs goes straight to your bottom line.
We've got a question here from James again. What are your opinions on back ordering and making this option available online for B2C business for high demand lines?
Depends on your industry. There's some industries I'm aware of that actually that allow back ordering, and in a highly desirable product in a particular brand, and they take 50% deposit up front, and the product can take months to deliver, and they get away with it in a particular supply chain. If you can create a product and a brand that does that, where you get paid up front, and you're effectively able to turn that cash flow around, absolutely go for it.
Yeah, and there's the flip side of that being that if you're taking back orders and taking deposits up front and then not able to deliver on time, and it leaves a bad taste in the customer's mouth that they're not willing to wait for, you know, it's potentially brand damaging as well. So it depends on the industry. If you've got a highly desirable product, you say people are willing to wait, they just want to make sure that their name's on it. Whereas if people start to get really annoyed that they should have arrived by now, you know, I paid a deposit, my interest rate mortgage, they're not going to be so happy about it.
Yeah. Product by product, SKU by SKU. Demand is brilliant, right? So if it's high demand, then obviously you can command the high price and the deposit. But if it's something that's something that can expire, something that's not very high volume, something that's on back order, if it's a long-standing relationship, 100% go for it. But again, it's always going to be horses for courses. And I think ultimately, from listening to Jason and listening to Carl, we think that there's a balancing act between two things, but it's not. There's 50 different things to balance against.
Mm-hmm. Interesting times, gentlemen. I think we're going to wrap it up there unless we get any last minute questions, but I think it's probably time to say thank you very much. That's been an extraordinarily valuable conversation.
Zander? I have a question for Greg.
Oh.
When do we get t-shirts?
Oh, mate, you only have to ask. Put one in the post for you.
Thank you.
This is the least we can do. We'll t-shirts. We'll back order those. So, okay, so I'm not sure when they'll turn up, but you know.
They IT back orders.
Yeah. Hey, thank you very, very much. We've covered an extraordinary amount of ground. I hope it was useful for our audience. I think there's a lot of little gems that people will pluck out for their individual circumstances, just get the grey matter moving and help everybody feel empowered as they kind of look to getting things shipshape in their own individual businesses. So thank you everybody so much, very much appreciated.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.